that I want to share with you, but before we jump into that, there are a couple things that people have asked from previous sessions that I want to just hit on real quick, okay? The first one was, and I thought this was a really good point. Someone mentioned to me, just the idea of when you're thinking about sexual intimacy, that sometimes people give up. They just kind of give in to the fact that it's just not going to be what they wanted, or it can't be what they wanted, and so they just give up. And so the idea of I just want to plant this in your head, like, don't give up. There are things that happen physically in life that may make it more challenging. There are things that happen emotionally in life that make it more challenging. And I would say it's worth the time, effort, energy, and money that you have to spend to figure out how to make that part of your relationship healthier. Because sometimes it can't be totally enjoyable for everybody. But to make it in a healthier place, don't give up. Keep pursuing sexual intimacy with each other because it's super important. Like we said earlier, it is the physical representation, the actual physical representation of what we're experiencing with each other emotionally and spiritually. Okay? So, you had a question for me. You remember what the question was?
Again.
Okay?
But it had more to do with this stuff before session 3 about core to core being known and getting deep into the core fears and wounds and desires and dreams, and that's all well and good, but how does that play out in a normal day-to-day life?
Yeah.
We're not going to be sitting down having these deep theological conversations with each other. I'm not saying I understand its place now. We intentionally take a weekend out of the year to focus on marriage and get together and challenge each other to think deeply. But day to day, how does that work? How do you get to that level?
I think that's a great
When
question.
life is taking your time?
Yeah, so really what you're saying is, how is this practical in our day-to-day walk? Like, theoretically, wow, yeah, it's cool, makes sense, but how does a couple who has kids and jobs and family life, how are they getting to this core-to-core connection every day? It seems like it would take a lot of time and energy. The answer to that's true. And so what I want to do is, I want to kind of maybe reset our expectation for what it is we're doing on a day-to-day basis, okay? So remember, we have 1 to 2 core relationships typically in life, maybe 3, depending on if we had some early on. And, but we should have identified somebody other than our spouse who we think we could pursue that with. And that needs to be somebody like a same-sex friend, not like opposite-sex friend. But remember this idea of safety and belonging. This is super important. This is where my answer comes from. The core relationship is going to happen when you have these intense times to be together. When you intentionally go away, when you go, maybe away for a weekend, just the two of you, it's important to set aside time where you're not necessarily like intentionally, saying, hey, okay, let's go through the list. Have you discovered any new core dreams, new fears, new, wounds? Like, that's not how we engage it. What we do is we practice the safety and belonging on a day-to-day basis. This is the daily living of a core relationship. And those graces that we talked about earlier, where I see you in a moment of frustration and I'm ready to pounce, but then I back off and I start to recognize, hey, wait a second, maybe I'm seeing evidence of that filter that you're experiencing me through. So I stop myself and I say, hey, I think that maybe you heard me saying something I didn't intend for you to hear. What's going on? Maybe have a 5-minute conversation about that. but you engage in creating a more safe space between each other and a sense of belonging that you're home with one another. So that when these conversations do happen organically between you, where, like, I had a friend the other day that came and told me that his parents had moved to Memphis and that they were planning to move away, and that it's really hard for him, and he feels like, they're just kind of abandoning him. Okay, so like that's a disclosure about something that's really happening in the moment. That's about what's going on in the heart, right? And we do that in our spousal relationships all the time. We'll have moments where, hey, somebody at work, said this to me, and I can't let it go. Like, I'm really upset about that. And then we engage each other in conversation about that. That's sharing from the core. And when we create this space where we have grace for one another, more and more and more, then it breeds more of this when we have the time to do it. Does that make sense? If there's any more questions, yeah, but what about this, then throw them out there. Yes, yeah, so a practical thing to put in place, what I tell couples is practice being intentional to be alone together 1 night a week, 1 weekend a month, 1 week a year. I know that sounds lofty, but that doesn't necessarily mean 1 night a week we have to get a babysitter and get away from the house. It means you have your night where you're going to sit down and you're going to talk and you're going to catch up on how are things going. You don't have to go to the core in every moment that's going on, but remember this: quantity time gives you quality time. Okay? So the more time you can spend together, the more quality it will be. But you have more opportunities to be in a quality time situation. Okay? So 1 night a week, 1 weekend a month, 1 week a year. Okay? So and I would say that going on vacation with the kids is good and okay, because you're out of your norm. And as long as you're spending that week of vacation, in the evening time when you're in bed or whatever, having that quality time together, that I would say that counts too. It's just being intentional that you're creating that space with one another. Any other questions so far?
No question, but it's a comment. I hear you saying that don't get too caught up on the formalism, because if you have a relationship, then this deep sharing will take place there.
Right. That's right. And as you go on your own journey to discover some of these things, you're going to want to share at some that. There will be things you will feel compelled to share, and those things will make you make more sense to your spouse. Those light bulbs go off. It's yeah, this is something that happened when I was a kid. My dad said I was a disappointment. And since that happened, I can't get it out of my head. It's always running in the background. I'm just realizing, those kind of things. Okay? Great comment. Any other comments? All right. So in terms of, I titled this last section, Sharing the Core Truth. And what I mean by that, sharing the core truth, is that, kind of tagging on to what I just said, as you dig further down and you understand where some of the hurt has been, just camping there is not going to do anything about healing some of our core wounds. And I think that's what the journey ultimately is about. It's healing our core wounds and understanding the other side, core dreams and desires, and pursuing those things. Because that's what's going to make our hearts come alive, right? But healing those core wounds is connected to learning what the core truth is about who we are. Okay? And stepping into that. And I talked about that some this morning. And sharing in that together is some of the most healing things that you can do with each other. Like, I believe that when we get to this place with our spouse where we're like, the example in my mind would be, we're not letting them live out their core lie, and we're calling out the truth of who they are. When we're doing that, then we will see our relationship flourish in a way that we didn't imagine was possible. And I know that sounds kind of lofty, right? But this is I think that as Christ followers, this is our responsibility, not just to our spouse, but to people in general, to see the truth of who they are and to call that out, rather than to constantly be pointing out all the bad things about all the people that we see. You think about your kids. What a gift it is to your children to see them. You see them in a way that nobody else does. I can remember my daughter Nora, when she was first born. She was 5 weeks early, and we had her in our room, and the nurse had just left, and I'm holding her, and I'm like, her color looks kind of strange. She looks a little gray. And my father-in-law, who is a pediatrician, grabs her and he's like, nah, she's fine. She looks good. No problem. I'm like, something doesn't feel right. And so the nurse comes back in, and I'm like, man, like, I feel like something looks off with my daughter. And she's like, oh yeah, she does look kind of gray. She opened up the shades and put her in the sun. She's like, yeah. So they rush her out, and her OSAT, her oxygen saturation level was like at 40. So she was crashing. So they immediately put her in the NICU. And next time I saw Nora, she had an IV in her head, right here in the soft spot, which I didn't know they did. Then she was my firstborn, and she was, this frail little thing. I just remember thinking, like, she just looks like she could break. She's so tiny. So she gets out of the NICU, and they put her in intermediate care, and that's when they start to like get her on a feeding and sleeping cycle. And the nurses would tell us, like, this girl, when she does not like something, she does not like it, and she will let us know. She's real sweet and calm until you do something that she is upset about, and she will lose it. And I'm going to tell you, that is still true to this day. Like, if she gets frustrated or mad about something, she's not like an angry kid at all. She's so sweet. Thankfully, she's like mine. She just kind of goes, we call it the noise. There's this place where it's like she's not even thinking straight. And that is a characteristic of her that's been there since birth. If you have kids, you know some of those things about them, right? And I think that our role and our responsibility is to notice with our kids those enduring qualities, not endearing, but enduring qualities, and to continue to call those forth, so that they can learn to live from the truth of who they are. When we can practice that with our kids, it's a totally different style of parenting, okay? But I think the place that we start doing that is by practicing it with each other. And then practicing it with the people around us. Because it's so easy to get caught up in just seeing the negative. And I'm not assuming that you guys are all always just like fighting or you're on each other's cases. But I do know in marriage that it's hard. It's hard to push past some of the frustrations and continually call out the truth. And so, I guess the question is for you to be considering, like, what do I know is the truth about who I'm with? What is the truth about my spouse? And how do we help each other live in that place? Now, some truths might be hard truths to hear, right? Like the reality of my experience with you is that you're mean to me. And I understand that it comes from some of your core wounds and your core lives, but my experience is that you're mean. Those are hard things to say, but they need to be said. And then on the other side, it's like, you're right, and I don't know why. And I need to dig down into that and figure out what's going on there. And I will. And I make an appointment to see a therapist, or I make a commitment to go see a friend, where I say, me and you are going to talk, we're going to go on a date, and we're going to spend time digging into why I'm mean to you sometimes. Because I don't know you. But we need to figure that out. Sharing the core truths of our experience, and then sharing the core truths of who somebody is, to call that, to bring that out more and more and more. That is where healing can come from, okay? About 4 years ago, I had some things happen with the agency that I was working at. So we had started this company in Louisiana, and I was the clinical director, which essentially meant with this particular company that I was like the second person, in the company. And had about 40 employees underneath me, within 6 months of starting the company. I was 30, how old was I? 31. I was 31 when I started managing these folks. And I've never managed anybody before. We had one employee in particular who was not doing her job, and we let her stay around about a year longer than we should have. It was very long suffering with her. Well, it turns out while she was working for us, she called Medicaid and reported us for fraud 3 times, which she knew would trigger a Medicaid investigation. And I was terrified, because it's kind of like the IRS. If they do an audit on you, you're like, man, we probably did things we didn't even know we did wrong. I mean, especially in the first year of a company's life, you would expect that you would make mistakes, right? And so I wasn't scared because I was like, I know this thing that I did wrong. I was scared because I didn't know if I'd done anything wrong, and I wasn't sure what they were wrong. And it caused me to go to a place of anxiety that was pretty extreme. And I remember I was just like sitting on the couch talking to Melissa, talking about how scared I was, and like I couldn't get past it, and she knew there was a lot of fear. And she said, Kevin, you are a good man, and you have done the right thing. And if they find something, then they do, but you can't live in fear. And I was like, I just don't know if that's, I just don't know. And she just said, she grabbed my hands and she said, I wish you could see yourself the way that I see. And like I can get choked up right now thinking about it. But that was a really amazing moment where she called out of me something that I couldn't even see in myself. All I could do was live in fear and worry and debilitating anxiety. And she stepped in and was like, I see something better than you could even know. That was really healing for me in that moment. Now, did it all go away in the moment? No, it didn't. But it was one big step towards, finding some relief from that. We're all going to hit low spots And if we don't spend the time learning those truths about our spouse and holding on to them, when things get tough, it's going to be hard for us to see them then. Right? And it's going to be really hard for us to call them back to that. So our responsibility to one another is to figure out what's going on in here, what are some of those core truths, and what do we see as core truths for the other person, and sharing those with each other. Okay? Here are some things, though, that I think will stand in the way of us doing that. Here's some what I call intimacy killers. And I want to just use these as a warning. Okay. Intimacy killers. Telling your wife or husband that they're just like their mother or father. That's an intimacy killer for sure. Don't do it. Unless you're using it as a compliment. Huh? Some folks have done that, I'm guessing. What did you say?
He said, unless it's true.
Unless it's true. Instead of saying you're like your mother or your father, say this specific thing is something that I don't or do appreciate about you. Okay? Don't bring up things that were forgiven. If you have said that you forgive and you've worked through a process of forgiveness with somebody, don't bring it up in a fight later on. Okay? There are people that will hold on and keep note of all the things that have built up over time, and then the spouse that doesn't know that it's happening burns dinner, and it's like all of it's right there for all the world to see. Okay? So don't let that stuff build up, and if it's been forgiven, leave it in the past. Because if you bring up things that you've already forgiven, then what that says is it's not safe with you. Even if I ask for forgiveness, you're making it unsafe for me to make mistakes and to even believe that you've let it go. Okay? Don't use what hurts your spouse as a weapon. If you know something is hurtful, for instance, you know your spouse sees one of their parents negatively, and you say, you're just like her, or you're just like him, and there's tension in that relationship and pain in that relationship, you're using something you know hurts as a weapon. Okay? Don't minimize something that your spouse says is an issue. If they say it's an issue for both of them to deal with. If you're not having, if you're the husband and you feel like you're not having sex as frequently as you'd like to, as a wife, you can't just dismiss that and say, oh, you're just a guy and you want it all the time. Right? Categorizing and dismissing away just makes it harder to disclose things later on. So what will the husband like to do? Start complaining. Instead of saying, hey, I really like for us to have sex more often. It's gonna be like, man, we never get to have sex. You're always tired. And, that's the kind of stuff that comes into play, and that complaining makes it worse and worse and worse, and builds more tension between two people. Don't project what you're feeling on your spouse. If you're angry, don't project that and make it that they're angry. Sometimes we displace our emotion onto the person sitting across from us rather than owning it ourselves. Have you ever noticed somebody doing that? They're angry and they're like, why are you so angry right now? And they're like, I'm not angry. Yes, you are angry. I know it. And something that goes along with this too is that when you get angry in conflict, Zach helped me with this. The Gottmans say above 110 beats a minute. Is that right?
Yeah, 110.
If your heart rate gets up above 110 beats per minute, you are physiologically incapable of processing the information that your spouse is telling you. So the Gottmans, who are like marriage gurus, they have heart rate monitors during therapy sessions, and if they start talking about something that gets the heart rate up above 110 beats per minute, they'll actually take a time out and wait until they'll do some calming down exercises and wait till things get lower and come back together and resume the conversation. So, if veins are popping out of your head, and your blood pressure you feel like your head's about to explode, and your heart is pumping really fast because you're angry, take a minute to calm down before you try to have a conversation about something. Okay? Alright. So, we talked about safety and belonging. We talked about intimacy killers. I want to read this story to you. But before I do, do you have any questions so far? Or comments? Nope? Okay. I think that the idea of digging deeper and deeper is super important. And it's both a spiritual journey and an emotional journey. And I don't think they're separated. I think they're intertwined. The emotional journey and the spiritual journey that we're on is between us and God and us and our spouse. And that should be happening, with all three people in that relationship. Okay? But the digging process is one that's partially our responsibility, and some we have to leave it to Christ as well. And our spouse helps with that also. So who has ever read the Chronicles of Narnia? Yeah? Okay. Great series. Y'all should read them if you have. And they have movies too, so those are... You watch the movies? Okay. So my favorite Chronicles of Narnia book is The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. And it's probably my favorite because of this scene. I love this particular scene in The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. If you remember, in The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, Lucy Pevensey, she's the youngest, and Edmund, who's the second youngest, along with their cousin Eustace, who is a very annoying, mean little boy, gets sucked into a painting that's in their uncle's house. And they're back in Narnia with Prince Caspian, who is on a journey to find his father and several men that went out on an excursion. And so they're sailing from island to island, okay? And on each island they find these different challenges that they come up against. They get to this one particular island, and as they're getting there, Eustace has just totally driven everybody bonkers. They have had it with him, and he has had it with them. He wants to get off the boat as soon as he can. So when they land, he jumps off the boat, and everybody kind of, meanders on to the shore, but he runs away from the crowd, from the group. And he's exploring the island by himself, and he comes across what he notices is a giant gold bracelet looking thing. And inside of the bracelet is the bone of a dragon arm. And so he takes this thing and he puts it on his arm, and immediately he's turned into a dragon. And he gets excited about this. Because it says at first, he realizes, oh man, I'm a dragon, and I'm going to go pay back all these people who've been so mean to me on the boat. So he starts flying over the camp of Prince Caspian's crew, and breathing fire at them, and scaring them, and causing them to run away. And he does this for like 3 or 4 days. And after 3 or 4 days, he gets tired of being a dragon. So he tries to take the armband off. Except it won't come off. It's stuck. So then he starts to get nervous. So then he flies back into camp, and this time he's wanting help, but because he's a dragon, they all run away. Finally, over time, he helps them figure out, he draws like with a stick in the sand, the name Eustace or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but finally he helps them understand that Eustace has become a dragon. And so nobody knows what to do. They try to pull the armband off, it won't come off. It's painful for them to even touch it at this point. And so in the middle of the night, he's sleeping by the camp, still a giant dragon, and he said, and he's recounting the story of what happens. But Aslan calls him. Okay? Now I'm going to read to you this exchange between him and Aslan. So Aslan tells him to get in this pool of water. Okay? And it says, the water was so clear, and I thought if I could get in there and bathe, it would ease the pain in my leg. But the lion told me I must first undress. Suddenly I realized that dragons are snaky sort of things, and snakes can cast their skins. So I started scratching myself, and my scales began coming off all over the place. And then I scratched a little deeper, and instead of just scales coming off here and there, my whole skin peeled off beautifully, as if I was a banana. In a minute or two, I just stepped out of it. I could see it lying there beside me, looking rather nasty. It was a most lovely feeling. So I started to go down into the well for my bath. But just as I was going to put my feet into the water, I looked down and saw that they were all hard and rough and wrinkled and scaly, just as they had been before. So I scratched and tore again, and this underskin peeled off beautifully. And out I stepped and left it lying beside the other one and went down to the well for my bath. Well, exactly the same thing happened again, and I thought to myself, how many skins have I got to take off? For I was longing to bathe my leg. So I scratched away for the third time, and off a third skin came, just like the 2 others had, and I stepped out of it. But as soon as I looked at myself in the water, I knew it had done no good. The lion said, you will have to let me undress you. I was afraid of his claws, but I was pretty nearly desperate now. So I just lay flat down on my back to let him do it. The very first tear he made was so deep that I thought it had gone right into my heart. And when he began pulling the skin off, it hurt. It hurt worse than anything I've ever felt. The only thing that made me able to bear it was just the pleasure of feeling the stuff peel off. Well, he peeled the beastly stuff right off, just as I had thought I'd done myself the other 3 times. Only they hadn't hurt. And there it was, lying on the grass, only ever so much thicker and darker and more knotted looking than the others had been. And there I was, smooth and soft as a peeled switch, and smaller than I had been. Then he caught hold of me. I didn't like that much, for I was very tender underneath now that I had no skin on. And he threw me into the water. It hurt terribly, but only for a moment. After that, it became perfectly delicious. And as soon as I started swimming and splashing, I found that all the pain had gone from my arm. And then I saw why. I turned into a boy again. After a bit, the lion took me out and dressed me in new clothes, the same I've got on now, as a matter of fact. And then suddenly, I was back here. There are some things that we have to have help. We have to have someone else digging to help us get there. And I think that's, if there's any real overarching takeaway, it's that's the beauty of marriage. God gave us somebody to walk this road alongside of us, who can help us peel back the layers, and get into those deeper parts of who we are. if we can live into that, if we can reflect a marriage that does that, imagine how things would look different. Imagine your spouse standing before the Lord and accounting for their life. And as they're recounting what they went through, what they experienced, listening to them either A, talk about the things that you did that made it harder for them, or B, talking about the things that you did to lift them up and to help them become the person that they were designed to be. I think it's easy for us to forget who the person is that's with us. It's easy for us to just like immediately jump into like a defensiveness in that, like, you are against me, or you want something for yourself more than you want what's best for me, or whatever it might be. And when we get to that place, I think we stop being the person that we intended to be the day we said I do, and the days before we said I do. When you said I do, did you not intend to be the best spouse that you could possibly be? Did you not plan to serve your spouse in a way that you couldn't even imagine at that point? Like, it was going to be so good, right? Did you want what's best for them more than you wanted the best for yourself? I know I did. And yet, the person I intended to be is not the person that I always am. Because the person we intended to be, we have to be intentional. When I meet with couples for premarital counseling for the first time, I always tell them, listen, every marriage is headed towards divorce from the moment you say I do. And you're like, well, this is not very encouraging. But it is. Think about it. If two people stay the same as they are when they first get married, and they intend to be something different, but they just don't do anything to grow together, at worst, it's going to destroy their marriage. At best, they'll just be roommates living in the same room. Because being married and growing together takes work, takes intentionality. Think about the kitchen in your house. If you just kind of sectioned off the kitchen and you never did anything to clean it up, maybe you didn't put any dishes in it at all, you didn't do anything to make it dirty, but you just didn't touch the kitchen at all, and you left it as it was, and you did that for 10 years, what would your kitchen look like if you never touched it through all that time? What would it look like? It'd be what? It'd be gross. Oh, it'd be real gross. It'd be full of bugs, dust, spider webs. When we don't tend to something, we see it in the world, and it's true for our marriage. When we don't tend to something on a regular basis, it moves towards messiness, moves towards grossness. That's a principle of life. So I'm like, the time you've spent this weekend doing this together is an example of tending to your marriage. But the work doesn't stop here. It's got to go on, and you've got to spend the time, which I know most of you will. You've got to spend the time digging in so that you can share your hearts with one another. Because ultimately, that's why you said I do. You said I do because that's the kind of marriage that you want. Right? Okay, so, final thing here, and then I'm going to let y'all ask questions or make comments or whatever to end. But loving well is something that is hard because I think we've cheapened the word love in our society. We use the word love to say, like, I know I'll say things like this all the time. I love pizza, right? And I actually really do love pizza. Like, I had it twice yesterday, lunch and dinner, and then for dinner the night before, and probably for lunch that day before, so. No, telling myself, oh, that's weird. No, I really love pizza, so, but think about that. Like, do I really love pizza? I mean, love is not just my emotional feeling towards it or the enjoyment of the taste. Love is something different. Dallas Willard says this about love. He says, what exactly is love? It is the will to good or benevolence. We love something or someone when we promote its good for its own sake. Love's contrary is malice, and its simple absence is indifference. Its normal accompaniment is delight, but a twisted soul may delight in evil and take no pleasure in good. Love is not the same thing as desire, for I may desire something like pizza without even wishing it well, much less willing its good. But I might desire a chocolate ice cream cone, for example, but I do not wish it well, I wish to eat it. This is the difference between lust, mere desire, and love, as between a man and a woman. Love is the simple task of willing the good for another person. And that is what's demonstrated in this idea of intimacy. That my goal, my responsibility, or is there a way to block the sun? Oh my goodness. it's like shining bright. That halo over there. I'm glad I'm not standing there. Y'all are blinded. Here we go. So love is about being for. Love is about being for the good of another. And that is our responsibility to our spouse, to be for their good. And then in return, not because we are, but their responsibility is to be for our good. And that way of being with one another is what creates the safety and belonging, and ultimately the core relationship.